Good afternoon, students. This is Dr. Anshoo Sharma from Government College, Chaksu. Um, my earlier video had given you an introduction of the poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, and I had also given you the introduction, a short introduction of the poem Ode to West Wind, which is part of our syllabus. And I had told you that in the next video I shall be beginning with the explanation of the poem itself. So, as I had told you earlier, Ode to West Wind is a poem written by the English romantic poet of the younger generation romantic poet, that is Percy Bysshe Shelley. And this poem was written by Shelley in the woods outside Florence, which is in Italy. And it was written in the autumn of 1819. As we had done the earlier poem by Keats, which was Ode to Autumn, if you remember, there too the poet had talked about the beauty of autumn because usually it's springtime which is celebrated, it is springtime which is considered to be very beautiful. But Keats also had talked about the beauty of autumn, and he had emphasized that autumn need not worry, and there was no competition as far as spring was concerned, and autumn, according to him, had a beauty of its own, unique to itself. And here again, you can see that it is in autumn, in the season of autumn, that this poem has been written by Shelley. And it was written in 1819, though it was published in 1820, an year later. Here in this poem, the speaker again directly addresses the west wind. So you can say that just as autumn had been personified by Keats in his poem, here the west wind has been personified by Shelley. And the speaker treats the west wind as a force of death and decay. This is an important, what do you say, fact. And but at the same time, what is interesting is that the poet welcomes this death and decay, because for him it means that uh, if death and decay is going to take place, only then rejuvenation and rebirth will also come. Because life and death, as we all know, is a cyclic pattern. And if death is here, if decay is here, then it signifies, it means that rejuvenation, rebirth is also just around the corner. So it is a poem of hope. And in the final two sections of the poem, the speaker suggests that he wants to help promote this rebirth through his own poetry. I had told you in the introduction that Shelley was looking for a utopian world, he was looking for a utopian future. And he had very radical ideas, and he had, a kind of revolutionary attitude towards the social setup of that time and the political setup of that time. And he was hoping to bring about a change. He was hoping for a future that was democratic, and he was hoping for a future that would be, beneficial and positive for the growth of mankind as a whole. And towards this, he was putting all his efforts, his energies were concentrated towards this goal. And his own poetry, he made it as a vehicle to convey his ideas, to convey his thoughts. And that rejuvenation he hopes to see in both the political and the poetic spheres. And a rebirth of society and its way of writing was what he was kind of looking forward to. So, before I start explaining you the different stanzas, let me just read you the poem once so that you can get the hang of it. It's a long poem of 5 stanzas, and uh, Broadly speaking, you can divide it into two parts, where in the first three stanzas he's talking about the effect of the west wind on land, on the sky, on the seas, and in the last two stanzas he's talking about the effect of the west wind on himself. As you know, it's like personal, about Shelley himself, so to say, and the effect that he hopes for, a change that he hopes for, or you can say the expectation that he has via the west wind. That expectation vis a vis himself is what is conveyed in the last two stanzas, that is the fourth and the fifth stanza. And in the first three stanzas, it is like the presence of west wind is all pervasive, it is all like kind of it's omnipresent, omnipotent. So this kind of power is being allotted to west wind, and it has the effect can be seen on the sky, on the land, on the water. So to say, you can say that it's almost as if the whole of the earth is affected by the west wind. So if something is that powerful, if something has the power to affect the whole of the earth, the whole of this planet, then it must be something really strong. It must be something uh, really grand, and it must be something which has ultimately the best kind of effect on not only the earth but the whole of mankind. So I'll just read this poem. Please be a little patient because it's a long poem, and because as I had told you that each stanza is of 14 lines, so it's like a sonnet in itself. So I'll be almost reading five sonnets. So here goes. Ode to the West Wind. O wild west wind, thou breath of autumn's being, thou from whose unseen presence the leaves dead are driven like ghosts from an enchanter fleeing. Yellow and black and pale and hectic red, pestilence stricken multitudes, O thou who chariotest to their dark wintry bed. The winged seeds, where they lie cold and low, each like a corpse within its grave, until thine azure sister of the spring shall blow her clarion over the dreaming earth, and fill, driving sweet buds like flocks to feed in air, with living hues and odors plain and hill, wild spirit, which art moving everywhere, destroyer and preserver, hear, O hear. Thou on whose stream, mid the steep sky's commotion, loose clouds like earth's decaying leaves are shed, shook from the tangled boughs of heaven and ocean. Angels of rain and lightning there are spread on the blue surface of thine airy surge, like the bright hair uplifted from the head of some fierce Maenad, even from the dim verge of the horizon to the zenith's height, the locks of the approaching storm. Thou dirge of the dying year, to which this closing night will be the dome of a vast sculpture. Sorry, I missed my line. Vaulted with all thy congregated might of vapors from whose solid atmosphere black rain and fire and hail will burst. O hear. Thou who didst waken from his summer dreams, the blue Mediterranean, where he lay, lulled by the coil of his crystalline streams, beside the pumice isle of Bay's Bay, and saw in sleep old palaces and towers quivering within the waves' intenser day, all overgrown with azure moss and flowers, so sweet the sense feigns picturing them. thou for whose path the Atlantic's level powers cleave themselves into chasms, while far below the sea blooms the oozy woods which wear the sapless foliage of the ocean, know thy voice, and suddenly grow grey with fear, and tremble and despoil themselves. O hear. So you can see these are the first three stanzas, and in the first three stanzas, the effect of the west wind on the earth, on the sky, and on the sea is apparent, is visible. Now I'll be reading the fourth and the fifth stanzas. You can see a shift in the mood here, and you can also see the shift in the last words of these two stanzas. In the first three stanzas, the poet has ended with "Oh, here." He's emphasizing that he wishes to address the west wind, and he's trying to attract the attention of the west wind to what he's saying. Okay, so now the fourth stanza, which is personal. Now he's talking about himself vis a vis the west wind. If I were a dead leaf, thou mightest bear. If I were a swift cloud to fly with thee, or wave to pant beneath thy power and share the impulse of thy strength, only less free than thou, O uncontrollable. If even I were as in my boyhood, and could be the comrade of thy wanderings over heaven, as then when to outstrip thy skyey speed scarce seemed a vision, I would never have striven as thus with thee in prayer in my sore need. Oh, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud. I fall upon the thorns of life, I bleed. A heavy weight of ours has chained and bowed one too like thee, tameless and swift and proud. Make me thy lyre, even as the forest is. What if my leaves are falling like its own? The tumult of thy mighty harmonies will take from both a deep, an autumnal tone, sweet though in sadness. Be thou, spirit fierce, my spirit. Be thou me, impetuous one. Drive my dead thoughts over the universe like withered leaves to quicken a new birth. And by the incantation of this verse, scatter as from an unextinguished hearth ashes and sparks my words among mankind. Be through my lips to unawakened earth the trumpet of a prophecy. O wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? So you can see that this is the complete poem, and it's very clear. The rhyme scheme is very clear here. When you read it, you have that lyrical quality, you have that lilting quality, that musical quality. The words have been placed in such a way, the end rhymes are very visible, the alliteration is there, the emphasis of the different uh, you know um, the different effects that the west wind has on the earth, the sky, the seas is apparent through the different comparisons and contrasts that the poet has shared here. And in the last two stanzas, as I had told you, he is talking about the expectation that he has from the west wind, the desire that he has from the west wind, that it should help him regenerate. It should help him to give birth to a new world and to a new self. So his poetry is the means to uh, a certain end. Now I'll just begin with the poem here. I do not think that I'll be able to complete the full poem, but let's begin and see how much we can do within the prescribed time limit. Now you can see on your screens that, like the earlier poem, The Autumn, I have put the meanings, the difficult meanings I have put in bold. So you can read those meanings very clearly. In the first stanza that we are going to do, you can see that he's addressing the west wind, and he addresses it as "O wild west wind." So you can see the sound WWW that is being repeated here, and he addresses the west wind as the breath of autumn's being. Breath, spirit, the essence, that autumn is the season, and the essence, or you can say the lifeline, the central spine, so to say, is the west wind of the autumn. And thou from whose unseen presence the leaves dead are driven like ghosts from an enchanter fleeing. Thou, addressing the west wind, not the autumn here. Here he's addressing the west wind, and he says, "You from whom, whose unseen presence." Now, why unseen? Because, as we all know, air, wind is something which we feel, but we cannot see it. So, therefore, the word unseen has been used. So, the unseen presence is felt by everyone, and the dead leaves, which are very dry and light, they are driven like ghosts from an enchanter fleeing. So, as soon as the west wind comes, these leaves they get scattered, and it seems as if they are running away from a enchanter, as if from a wizard or a witch. So he says, "You, the unruly west wind." Now it's like, why unruly? Because it is very fast, it's very fast moving, it is strong, it is headstrong, it does not listen to anybody, it has a mind of its own. Therefore, he addresses it as unruly, he calls it unruly. So he says, "You, the unruly west wind, are the essence of the fall season, the autumn season. You are invisible, but you scatter the fallen leaves, and they seem to be like ghosts running away from the enchanter, or the witch or wizard. And these leaves are yellow and black and white and red. Why yellow, black, white, and red? Because in the spring seasons, the leaves are young, they are fresh, and the color is usually bright green or dark green. But as the time passes, as the season moves, as the season changes, the leaves become duller. The leaves lose their sap. They become lifeless. And when the leaves become lifeless, the color automatically changes. That's a natural process. And the color of the leaves during autumn are either yellow or black or white or wild red. That's the effect of autumn season. And what do they look like? They look like crowds of sick people because of this color. Usually when you are sick, your countenance becomes pale, it becomes yellowish. So similarly, these leaves also, they give the impression of a crowd of sick people. And this west wind, what does it do? It carries the seeds along with it, and it carries the seeds as if you are their chariot. It's a horse drawn carriage, that's a chariot. So it's almost as if this west wind is a chariot to these seeds, and carries these seeds down to the earth, where they'll sleep all winter. How does it carry? It's like, it's the effect of this, that speedy west wind, that the seeds they are taken deep down into the earth by the force, and these seeds lie within the earth for the winter season, almost as if they are sleeping. And throughout the winter they'll sleep. It's almost like hibernation. During deep winters, strong winters, when it's all snow all around, usually there are some animals that burrow deep into the earth. They have their burrows inside the earth, and they sleep throughout the winter. So that's hibernation. Similarly, it's the seeds which seem to sleep throughout the winter, and they lie there cold and humble, like dead bodies in their graves. So he's comparing them to the dead bodies. They're actually not dead, because within the seeds is the possibility of regeneration, the possibility of new growth. The new plants are going to grow out of those seeds when the right season arrives, right? So they are not actually dead, but just because they are lying absolutely quiet, just because they are lying without any movement, and they are lying within the earth, therefore the poet says that it almost seems that their bodies are lying in their graves until your blue sister, the spring wind, blows her trumpet and wakes up the earth. So, autumn and spring, they are being addressed as sisters, and he says that till your blue sister, the spring wind, it will blow, and it will come, and it will come in all its glory, and it will be coming with a lot of sound and a lot of noise and music of its own. So it's almost as if she'll be blowing her trumpet, and she'll wake up the earth. So, when the spring comes, all these seeds are going to flower into plants, into trees, and there will be, a fresh life all around. So, he says that the trumpet will be blown, and the earth will become beautiful, and it will become alive once again. Then, what will happen? All the seeds will they'll start budding, and what do they look like? What kind of imagery that he's drawing here? That they look like flocks of sheep. Flocks of sheep is again, they are white in color, soft white in color. So here he's using the word driving sweet buds like flocks to feed in air. So it's like, those buds are growing, and they seem like white fluffy sheep that are, sorry, not sheep that are, blowing in the air. And this image is actually very beautiful, and it seems as if they are soft, cottony feel, that look is there, and it seems that they will be feeding in the air, in the open air. And she fills the meadows and the hills with sweet smells and beautiful colors. That is the effect of spring. Hues means colors. And what happens in spring, even in autumn, I had told you that spring, when this spring is being described, it's usually expected to be very colorful, very bright, and the fragrance that is, all around, it's heady, it's very heady, and it makes you kind of faint. So, all the plains and all the hills that is all around, the whole of the earth would be surrounded with bright colors and beautiful fragrance. Then he says, unruly west wind moving everywhere, you are both an exterminator and a savior. Now, these two words are extremely important when he's saying that wild spirit again, unruly. Uh, Headstrong. So, this wild spirit, this wild west wind is moving everywhere. It is all pervading, and it is at the same time destroyer and preserver. Destroyer. Why? Because destroyer, as I have explained in this, that it drives all the plants, it drives all the dried leaves and the seeds inside the earth. So, as if leading them to their grave. And preserver, why preserver? Because at the same time it's preserving them within the womb of the earth. And very soon, when spring will arrive, these same seeds are going to bloom, they're going to bud, they're going to flower. So it is the destroyer and the preserver at the same time. And he says, please listen to me. Hear, oh, hear. This is the emphasis. Whenever any word is repeated twice, or maybe more than twice, then it is kind of, reiterating something, emphasizing something. And here the poet is trying to emphasize, is trying to draw the attention of the west wind to all that he wants to tell her. So it's almost like the Hindu gods, like Shiva and Vishnu. Shiva is supposed to be destroying whatever has come to its natural end, whatever the time has come, when the right time has come for us to leave. So it is said that Shiva brings us to our end. Meanwhile, Vishnu is the other god, who is the god of perseverance, the preservance, who preserves us, who takes care of us, who helps us on a daily basis, and our existence is dependent on Lord Vishnu. So it's something like that, a destroyer and preserver. Here the west wind is an embodiment of both. A destroyer and preserver is an embodiment of both exterminator as well as a savior. So, this is the first stanza, and you can see how beautifully the similes have been made use of, how clearly he's making use of different poetic devices, and very clearly the emphasis in this first stanza is on the effect of the west wind on a land, on its plants, on its animals, on the foliage. So he's talking about the effect, the strong effect, the effect as a destroyer and a preserver on land. So I'll end here. We'll do the next stanzas in the next video. I hope it is clear. Please listen to it carefully, read the poem. Till next time. Thank you once again for your patient listening. Good day.